Hey everyone! Welcome to Anime Dreams. Excited to have you all here on my YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into another thrilling chapter of our fanfiction series. What if Naruko mastered the Snake Sage mode? Part 4. Disclaimer: this channel is dedicated to entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage used. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's jump right in. When Naruko arrived at the site where the second phase of the Chunin exams was set to take place, she glanced around and noticed that only a few participants had arrived before her. With some time to spare, she took out a book she had picked up the previous day about wind chakra manipulation. She reviewed the section explaining how chakra could be infused into various shinobi tools. The book noted that while kunai and shuriken could conduct chakra, they were not the most efficient due to their standard metal composition. Determined to make the most of her time, Naruko practiced channeling her chakra into a kunai, refining her technique before the exam officially began. After about 10 minutes, all the participants had gathered, signaling the start of the second round. Anko Madarashi, the proctor, stepped forward to address the group. "Before we begin, there's something I need to distribute," Anko announced, holding up a stack of papers, one for each participant. "These are consent forms that you must sign before proceeding." She spoke with a deceptively cheerful smile, which unsettled some of the young ninja. A curious participant from Takigakura raised a hand and asked about the purpose of the forms. Anko responded with a playful chuckle, amused by her own sense of humor. "Well, you see, this exam is quite challenging, and I need to make sure you all understand the risks involved. Without these forms, any incidents that occur would be entirely my responsibility," she said with an exaggerated grin. Shifting to a more serious tone, she continued, "I will now explain the second phase of the exam. After my explanation, you will sign the forms and check in at the booth behind me for the final details." She paused briefly to ensure she had everyone's attention before proceeding. "This phase is designed as the ultimate survival challenge," she stated. "First, let's discuss the setting. The exam will take place in Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death. This area contains 44 gates surrounding a central tower, which will serve as the final destination. The fastest way to the tower is by following the river, which runs directly through the training ground. Since the entire area is circular, the distance from any starting point to the tower is approximately 10 kilometers. She continued, "During this test, your goal is to complete a specific task using your ninja skills. You will compete in a scroll retrieval challenge." A participant from the crowd inquired about the details of the challenge, prompting Anko to elaborate. "Each team will be assigned one of two scrolls, either the Heaven Scroll or the Earth Scroll. Since there are 21 teams, half will receive a Heaven Scroll while the other half, plus one additional team, will receive an Earth Scroll." She then explained the objective. To pass, your team must reach the tower with both a Heaven and an Earth Scroll in your possession. This caused many participants to realize that they would need to strategize carefully, as obtaining both scrolls would require interacting with other teams. Adding to the challenge, Anko revealed another important detail. The time limit for this phase is 120 hours, exactly 5 days. Additionally, you are not allowed to bring any pre-prepared food with you. We will be confiscating it, as part of being a ninja is learning to adapt and survive in unpredictable conditions. She smiled mischievously, clearly enjoying the reaction from the participants. One particular student, the Akimichi heir, looked especially alarmed. "Wait, what about meals?" he exclaimed, clearly distressed by the thought of going without food. Anko responded in a teasing yet informative manner, "You'll have to rely on the resources available in the forest. There are plenty of edible plants and small animals, but be cautious, some of them are not as harmless as they seem." Moving on, she provided additional details about the difficulty of the challenge. "Don't assume this will be easy. As time passes, fatigue will set in, distances will feel longer, and rest will become scarce. You will have to stay sharp and manage your energy wisely." Finally, she outlined the conditions for disqualification. "Now, let's talk about what will get you eliminated. If your team does not reach the tower within the 5-day limit with both required scrolls, you will be disqualified automatically. With that, the Genon understood that the challenge ahead would test not only their combat abilities but also their survival skills, teamwork, and endurance. Second, if a team loses a member during the exam due to unforeseen circumstances, they will be automatically disqualified. Additionally, participants are not allowed to quit midway through the test. Once inside the forest, they must remain for the entire duration of the exam. And finally, the most crucial rule: under no circumstances should you open the scroll until you arrive at the tower, Anko declared with an air of finality, daring anyone to challenge the rule. To her amusement, someone was bold, or perhaps reckless, enough to ask the question. That person was Kiba Inuzuka. "Oh yeah? What happens if we do open the scroll?" The boy with a small dog perched on his head questioned, directing his curiosity toward Anko. Anko chuckled, sending a chill through the crowd. That would be a surprise for whoever chooses to break the rule. A Chunin is expected to handle classified and important information with care. This test evaluates your trustworthiness, she explained, her tone carrying a hint of mystery. Kiba quickly took a step back, realizing that pressing further might not be the best idea. Now that the rules are clear, it's time to proceed. Exchange your registration forms for your designated scroll, select a starting gate, and wait for the signal to begin, Anko instructed. The team swiftly prepared for the challenge ahead. Follow an instructor to your assigned gate. The exam will commence in 30 minutes. She announced, ensuring that all the participants understood their next steps. Half an hour later, Anko's voice, amplified with chakra, echoed across the forest. The second phase of the Chunin exams begins now, she declared. At that moment, the gates, held shut by sealing techniques, swung open, allowing the teams to enter the dense forest and begin their test of survival. Barely 2 minutes had passed before the first encounter between teams erupted. Among them, one squad from the Hidden Leaf village had already gained an advantage, thanks to the strategic thinking of their Aburame clan member, who possessed an exceptional understanding of the forest's ecosystem. A ninja from the Hidden Sand village spotted teammates standing in the open and smirked, convinced that securing their scroll would be effortless. However, he was gravely mistaken. Unbeknownst to him, the Aburame shinobi had already set a plan in motion, utilizing his unique abilities to manipulate the forest's tiny inhabitants. As the sand ninja advanced, he failed to notice until it was too late. Small insects had discreetly attached themselves to his arm, drawing away his energy at an alarming rate. By the time he realized what was happening, teammate was already prepared to take action. Surprisingly, it was not Shino who commented on the situation when the 3 Suna shinobi collapsed due to the effects of the jumping leeches. Instead, Kiba spoke up. The jumping leeches of the Leaf Village can sense living creatures and attack in swarms. After just 5 minutes, they can drain enough blood to leave someone unconscious, Kiba explained. Shino, acknowledging the accuracy of his teammate's statement, gave a nod of approval. With that information in mind, teammate carefully searched through the belongings of the Suna team, looking for the scroll required to advance to the third and final stage of the Chunin exams. With Team 7. Hearing a distant scream echo through the dense forest, Sakura turned to her teammates, a hint of hesitation in her voice. Did I just hear someone scream? Yes, that was definitely a scream, Naruko confirmed, her voice surprisingly calm and reassuring. But don't worry. As long as we stick together and stay alert, we'll be just fine. Encouraged by Naruko's confidence, Sakura felt reassured. Her earlier doubts about entering the Forest of Death faded, and she focused on their goal, securing both scrolls needed to advance. As they moved forward, Naruko suddenly stopped and gave her teammates an apologetic look. Sorry, guys, but I need to take a quick break. Understanding her request, Sasuke and Sakura nodded in agreement, well aware that Naruko often took more frequent breaks than most people. She stepped behind a tree, making sure to stay close enough to her team to avoid getting separated while also maintaining enough distance for privacy. With Sasuke, while Naruko had stepped away for a brief moment, an imposter disguised as her emerged from the same direction, expressing how much better they felt. When Sakura, feeling uncomfortable, politely asked them to stop as she believed such remarks were unnecessary, Sasuke decided to intervene. As soon as Sakura suggested continuing their journey, Sasuke, recognizing the situation, swiftly approached Naruko and firmly addressed the matter. Concerned by his reaction, Sakura gently reminded him to handle the situation with care. "What was that for?" the fake Naruko asked, clearly irritated by the unexpected action of her supposed teammate. Unconcerned by the imposter's feelings, Sasuke spoke firmly. "Where is the real Naruko?" he demanded, his tone leaving no room for doubt. His sharp gaze scrutinized the fake Naruko, making the disguised individual nervous. Realizing that Sasuke had caught on, the imposter made one final attempt to maintain the illusion. "What are you talking about all of a sudden?" the person questioned while rubbing the spot where Sasuke had struck them. However, Sasuke was not convinced. "Your transformation is sloppy," he stated matter-of-factly. "You got the details wrong. Naruko is left-handed, but your shuriken pouch is on the right. And the biggest giveaway? Naruko has 3 whisker marks on each cheek, while you only have 2. At those words, the imposter realized the disguise had failed and released the transformation technique, revealing their true identity, a ninja from the Hidden Rain village. Not wanting to back down, the enemy swiftly prepared to engage in battle. Sasuke, already anticipating the confrontation, activated his Sharingan, eager to test his abilities. With sharp focus, he maneuvered skillfully, using his surroundings to his advantage. In one fluid motion, he intercepted an incoming kunai with his foot, flipped it into the air, and launched it with precision. The Rain Ninja barely dodged the attack, avoiding it by a narrow margin. Sasuke continued to assess his opponent, his confidence evident as he prepared for the next move. Meanwhile, with Naruko. While Naruko was taking a short break, the remaining members of Team Oboro were secretly preparing an ambush. They intended to take her by surprise and then regroup with their ally. However, they had greatly underestimated Naruko Uzumaki's abilities. Sensing their presence, Naruko swiftly pulled out a few kunai, tossed them into the air, and formed a series of hand seals. "Wind release, Gale Palm," she called out. A sudden gust of wind enhanced the speed of her kunai, making them nearly impossible to dodge. The attacking ninja struggled to react in time, quickly realizing they had miscalculated. Naruko landed gracefully, satisfied with how easily she had handled the situation. She had been hoping for more of a challenge, but she wasn't one to complain. With a small sigh, she dusted herself off and set off to reunite with her teammates. As she approached, Sakura's eyes widened with relief. "Naruko, you're okay," she exclaimed, clearly glad to see her teammate unharmed. "How did you manage to defeat them?" Sakura asked, curious about what had happened. Naruko shrugged. "They underestimated me. They didn't know what I was capable of, and that was their mistake." Sasuke listened and gave a slight nod. Their battles had played out similarly, though he wished he had been the one to take on multiple opponents. With their mission still ongoing, the team gathered themselves and prepared for what was next. Once everything was settled, Naruko searched through the belongings of the Rain Ninja and discovered a Heaven Scroll. However, since Team 7 had already obtained one at the beginning of the exam, this meant they still needed to locate another team to challenge in order to acquire the missing scroll. With that in mind, Team 7 ventured deeper into the forest, carefully navigating their surroundings in search of another group to compete against. After an hour of cautious movement along the treetops, they came across a small clearing that they needed to cross before re-entering the dense forest on the other side. As they dropped down into the clearing, a figure wearing what appeared to be a kusagaku headband activated a powerful technique, an enhanced version of the wind release, Great Breakthrough Jutsu. The technique was so intensified that, rather than its usual classification as a C-rank jutsu, it bordered on a high B rank, possibly even an A rank in strength. Despite her training in tree climbing, the sheer force of the wind technique separated Naruko from her teammates, sending her hurtling away. Thud. Upon impact, her head struck the ground, leaving her feeling disoriented. The fact that she remained conscious despite the fall was remarkable, something that would leave even experienced medical professionals astonished. Looking up, Naruko noticed a large shadow overhead and tried to get a clearer view. As she focused, she realized that the figure seemed oddly familiar. It was none other than Shakudo, the esteemed daughter of the Snake Clan king. "Shakudo-sama?" Naruko asked hesitantly, puzzled by the unexpected encounter. Just moments ago, she had braced herself for a startling surprise after nearly being swept away by a powerful gust of wind. Now, instead of danger, she found herself face to face with a familiar presence. When the individual before her addressed her by name, Naruko was utterly taken aback. How could an ordinary Genin possibly possess knowledge of her true identity? The regal, violet-hued serpent seethed at the thought that someone might have leaked confidential information. As she turned her attention back to her meal, an unusual detail caught her eye. A strikingly familiar golden mop of hair sat in front of her, instantly reminding her of an Uzumaki her father had once instructed her to meet, the one he believed to be the future of the clan. Observing the individual closely, she noted the brilliant golden blonde hair and the unmistakable forehead protector of the Hidden Leaf village. This time, the serpent utilized all of her heightened senses to analyze the person standing before her. As she relied on her keen sense of smell, realization struck: this was Naruko, the very individual she had developed a fondness for since their initial encounter. She recalled how their first meeting had left Naruko utterly flustered, a memory that still amused her. Recognizing the serpent wasn't immediate for Naruko either. The reptilian creature had undergone a significant growth spurt since their last encounter. Previously, she had been about 5 times the size of an ordinary anaconda found beyond Mount Mayaboku, but now, she had more than doubled in size. Whereas before she might have been able to swallow Naruko with some difficulty, the princess of the Snake Clan was now formidable enough to easily accommodate Naruko and her 2 teammates without the slightest discomfort. "Naruko-kun, well, I certainly wasn't expecting you to be the one I was sent to confront," the enormous purple serpent remarked, her tone carrying a hint of intrigue. Naruko instinctively tensed, uncertain of how to react. She had long desired to join the Snake Clan, as they had been instrumental in her growth and transformation over the past 5 months. The thought of clashing with them was the last thing she wanted. "You need not worry, Naruko-kun," Shakudo reassured her. "My orders were simply to ensure you did not interfere with the only other summoner bound to our contract. Fortunately for you, no command was given to harm you." A wave of relief washed over Naruko, and she couldn't help but smile. She had developed a strong rapport with Shakudo-sama, and the idea of being forced into conflict with her was unsettling. However, curiosity soon took hold, and she found herself wondering who exactly had summoned Shakudo in the first place. "Shakudo-sama, if I may ask, who is the summoner that requested your presence?" Naruko inquired, a growing suspicion forming in her mind. Shakudo's expression darkened slightly. "It is unfortunate that my grandfather allowed someone you know as Orochimaru to sign our contract when he was your age. At the time, we had no way of knowing the path he would take. There was no trace of malice in him then." She sighed before continuing. "By the time we realized the extent of his corruption, eliminating him was no longer an option. He had become far too powerful, and, more importantly, our clan holds an unbreakable principle: we do not harm our own, no matter the circumstances." Naruko nodded solemnly. She understood all too well what it was like to bear the weight of someone else's actions shaping how others perceived her. Shakudo's voice became more measured. "However, while we as snakes abide by this rule, the human summoners on our contract do not fall under the same jurisdiction. As representatives of our clan, they are permitted to face one another if necessary." Then, with an air of finality, she added, "If you join the clan, you will be expected to confront Orochimaru." Naruko swallowed hard. She had grown considerably stronger, but the mere thought of facing someone as formidable as Orochimaru was overwhelming. Gathering her composure, she met Shakudo's gaze with determination. "Shakudo-sama, is there anything else I can do to ensure I am fully prepared to earn a place within the esteemed Snake Clan?" she asked with utmost respect. While posing the question, Naruko hoped she wasn't being too eager or impatient. Fortunately, Shakudo did not interpret it that way. Instead, she seemed pleased by Naruko's dedication. Taking a moment to observe Naruko more closely, Shakudo noted the improvement in her attire. The olive and black combination was far more suitable than her previous choices, and it was an aesthetic her father would likely approve of, at least until Naruko could be properly outfitted in attire that reflected her affiliation with the Snake Clan. Beyond mere appearances, Shakudo could sense a profound transformation in Naruko. Over the past 4 months, she had grown remarkably, not just in skill, but in presence. There was no doubt in Shakudo's mind that Naruko was destined to become the next summoner of the Snake Clan. She could sense the raw potential within her. If you perform well in this round and make it to the final stage, we will need to train rigorously to ensure that you represent the Heavy Clan with honor, Shakudo stated. Naruko's face lit up with a beaming smile. This exam was the only thing standing between her and the closest thing to a family she had ever known. Thank you, Shakudo Wani-sama. Naruko called out, her voice overflowing with happiness as she leapt forward, wrapping her arms as much as possible around the princess of the Snake Clan. Shakudo was momentarily taken aback by the unexpected embrace, yet she couldn't help but feel touched. She recalled her father's words about Naruko, an orphan who had grown up without the warmth of a family, someone who cherished bonds more than anything. This realization softened Shakudo's perspective, filling her with newfound respect and sympathy for the young kunoichi. Gently, Shakudo returned the hug, wrapping part of her body around Naruko in a comforting gesture. In that moment, Naruko felt an overwhelming sense of joy, momentarily forgetting everything else, including the danger her teammates faced at the hands of one of the legendary Sannin. Now then, we should get moving. If you linger too long, you might not complete your test in time. No doubt your teammates will need your help, especially after whatever Orochimaru has planned. He seems particularly interested in that Uchiha boy, likely because of his desire to master all ninjutsu. The Sharingan would certainly aid in that pursuit, Shakudo remarked. Naruko's eyes widened as she suddenly remembered her team. She knew she couldn't act until Shakudo left, as staying would put her in a difficult position. Still, she hoped that whatever ordeal her friends were facing, they would be able to endure it and make it to the tower. Passing the Chunin exams meant she would be welcomed into the Snake Clan, something she deeply wished for. After exchanging farewells, Naruko was about to move forward when a piercing scream rang out, instantly grabbing her attention. The sound came from nearby, and a sense of urgency filled her mind. What if it was Sakura? Without hesitation, she sprinted toward the source of the cry, determined to help her teammate. As she arrived, her eyes widened in shock and excitement. Standing before her was someone she hadn't seen in over 3 months, someone who had once been her first true friend, a person who had accepted her for who she was. It was none other than Karen-chan, the girl who had given her the first real sense of companionship. However, Naruko's joy quickly turned to concern when she saw Karen leaning against a tree, visibly frightened. A large bear loomed over her, growling menacingly, clearly seeing her as its next meal. Naruko knew she had to act fast. As she prepared to use her jutsu to protect Karen, the bear let out a powerful roar, causing the girl to stumble backward and lose her glasses. Without them, she was completely vulnerable. Just as the bear prepared to strike, Naruko swiftly formed the necessary hand signs and unleashed wind release, drilling air bullet. The gust of compressed wind struck the bear with enough force to send it staggering back, dazing it long enough for Naruko to step in front of Karen protectively. Once the danger had passed, Naruko landed gracefully and approached Karen, who was fumbling around, trying to find her glasses. Spotting them nearby, Naruko picked them up with a small smile. Here, close your eyes for a second, Karen-chan, Naruko said kindly. Karen hesitated for a brief moment, unsure whether to trust the voice speaking to her. Yet, something about it felt familiar, comforting even. Deciding to trust in the person who had just helped her, she closed her eyes. As soon as she put her glasses back on and opened her eyes, she locked onto Naruko's face. Realization hit her instantly, and a deep blush spread across her cheeks. She couldn't believe who had just come to her rescue. It was the same person who had taken her on her very first date and, coincidentally, the same person she had shared her first kiss with. That person was none other than Naruko Uzumaki, and there was no one else in the world she would have rather been saved by. Overwhelmed by the emotions rushing through her and wanting to express her gratitude for Naruko's kindness, the red-haired girl sprang forward, wrapping her arms around Naruko in a warm embrace. Without hesitation, she leaned in, sharing a heartfelt kiss to show just how thankful she was. Surprised by the sudden gesture, Naruko's face turned a deep shade of red. Unlike their first kiss, one that had been awkward and unexpected, this moment felt different. With time, they had both come to understand each other better, making this shared moment even more special. Looking back on it in the future, as they reminisced about their journey together, they would agree that this was one of the most unforgettable moments of their lives. Naruko! Karen called out with excitement, overjoyed to see her friend once more. Naruko Uzumaki, at your service, she exclaimed with a bright smile. The blonde was just as thrilled as Karen to see her again. That unexpected kiss had sent a rush of excitement through her, leaving her energized and full of adrenaline. Wait! Uzumaki? The grass ninja questioned, her expression slowly shifting into one of shock, much to Naruko's confusion. Yeah? Naruko responded, unaware of the thoughts racing through Karen's mind. I'm an Uzumaki too. Despite all the experiences that had shaped Naruko's outlook, this was something she had never anticipated. Since childhood, she had quietly held on to the hope of meeting a family member, only for that hope to feel too distant, too uncertain. It was easier not to expect anything at all. You're probably my cousin. I had a crush on my own cousin. Oh no! Karen exclaimed, utterly horrified at the realization. Naruko, still stunned, processed the information. The first girl she had ever shared a kiss with was, in fact, family. Feeling a wave of embarrassment, Naruko could feel her face heat up. This wasn't exactly how she imagined things turning out. Looking over at Karen, it was clear she felt the same way, completely mortified. Karen, I really need to get back to my team. They're in the middle of an important fight. But I'll leave a clone here so you two can talk, and when it disappears, I'll get all the memories like we had the conversation together. Karen remained silent, still trying to process everything, as Naruko quickly created a shadow clone and hurried back to her team. So, how have you been? How's your training in medical ninjutsu going? Naruko's clone asked, eager to shift the conversation away from the unexpected discovery. Karen's eyes lit up as she eagerly shared her progress. Well, when we first met, I had barely learned the mystical palm healing jutsu. But I've been practicing a lot, and I've really improved, she said with clear pride, wanting Naruko to know how seriously she took her training. Just as Naruko was about to congratulate her, Karen continued excitedly. Oh, and I almost forgot. I also discovered that I have a natural ability as a sensory ninja. I've been working on developing a technique based on that. Right now, if I really focus, I can sense chakra signatures within a 5-kilometer radius. She added, clearly proud of her rare ability. Naruko smiled, impressed. That's amazing, Karen. I know medical jutsu requires a ton of knowledge and precise chakra control just to grasp the basics. You must have worked really hard. Karen blushed slightly at the praise before shifting the conversation. What about you, Naruko? How has your training been going since we first met? She asked curiously. Based on the strength of Naruko's chakra, she figured she must have improved a lot. Naruko beamed. Well, I followed your advice on my diet and asked Kakashi-sensei for more intense training. I've gotten stronger, faster, and my wind-style ninjutsu has improved a lot. Moments like these reminded Naruko just how far she had come, and she couldn't help but feel proud of her progress. As the two friends chatted and caught up on their lives since their last meeting, Karen admitted that she was uncertain about whether she truly wanted to be a ninja. She questioned if she had the determination to meet the physical demands and mental discipline required to become a genin. Ever since she had started using her abilities to heal others, she realized that she found far more fulfillment in helping people than in combat. The fact that she had never been on a proper mission before being sent here deeply frustrated Naruko. Learning that Karen had essentially been used as a tool by her village to secure more missions struck a nerve. Naruko had always felt a strong sense of empathy for those who had little control over their own circumstances. What made matters even worse was that both of Karen's supposed teammates believed themselves to be the leader of their squad, each going their own way and expecting the others to follow. When one teammate went in one direction and the other in the opposite, Karen was left alone in the middle. Fortunately, thanks to her sensory abilities, she was able to navigate the treacherous forest and avoid unnecessary danger. As their conversation came to a natural pause, Naruko knew it was time to leave. However, she made sure to escort Karen to one of the gates first. The forest of death was far too perilous for her to be wandering alone. Karen was well aware of this and secretly wished she would have the chance to meet Naruko again someday. Before parting, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms tightly around the blonde. "I'll miss you, Naruko. I wish that either you were from Kusagaku or that I was a ninja from Konoha," she confessed, still processing the revelation that she had a long-lost family member. While the heartfelt exchange between the two Uzumaki was taking place, the real Naruko hurried back to her teammates. When she finally spotted them, she was shocked to see Sakura struggling to support Sasuke, barely managing to stay on her feet. Without hesitation, Naruko created a shadow clone to take the burden off Sakura's shoulders. Noticing Naruko, all the emotions she had just experienced at the hands of Orochimaru resurfaced. "Where were you, Naruko? When we needed you the most, you didn't show up." The most important lesson Kakashi-sensei taught us was that those who abandon the mission are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are even worse. Sakura's voice was filled with frustration as she confronted her blonde-haired teammate, who visibly flinched. "She's right. I prioritized learning about Karen and our family connection over my team. I'm really sorry, Sakura. I got caught in a powerful gust of wind and was knocked unconscious. When I woke up, I found myself trapped inside a giant snake. I had to figure out how to escape without being dissolved by its stomach acid. I got here as fast as I could," Naruko explained, though guilt gnawed at her for not telling the full truth. She was surprised at how quickly she had come up with the excuse. Too exhausted to dwell on it, Sakura simply felt relieved that Naruko had arrived. Having her here meant she had someone to rely on. As the sky darkened, Naruko took the initiative to create clones, set up traps, gather food, and prepare a meal for both of them. The moment Sakura finished eating and lay down, all the adrenaline left her body, and she quickly fell into a deep sleep. "I'm sorry. I'll do better next time," Naruko thought to herself, guilt weighing heavily on her for putting her personal desires before Team 7. With a plan in place, Ken, the only female on the sound team, attached an explosive tag to a squirrel and sent it toward the blonde-haired girl, assuming she was the only one left. However, Naruko quickly noticed the seal stuck to the squirrel's back and threw a kunai near the small animal, startling it enough to run in the opposite direction. Lifting her head, she spotted 3 ninjas perched on a mix of rocks and tree branches, watching her intently. Still feeling guilty about her actions the previous day, Naruko resolved to handle this battle alone. She would carry the responsibility on her shoulders. Kin stepped forward. "Wake up, Sasuke-kun. We want to deal with her first," she ordered, attempting to sound as commanding as possible. Naruko, however, appeared indifferent, a deliberate act to make them overconfident and lure them into her traps. Her expression darkened as she fixed them with a piercing gaze. "What is the mark that Orochimaru placed on Sasuke's neck?" Though phrased as a question, it was more of a demand. Sakura had filled her in on the details the previous day, and Naruko wasn't here to exchange pleasantries. The 3 sound ninja were momentarily shocked that the girl before them not only knew of their master but also wasn't afraid to say his name. Regaining his composure, the impulsive Zaku spoke next. "Hearing that, it's clear we can't let you go. That means we'll have to deal with not only Sasuke but also you and your friend over there," he said confidently. "Wait, Zaku. Stop," Dosu interjected before anything could escalate. He had noticed something off about the area in front of them. It seemed deliberately set up for a trap. Huh? Why? Zaku asked, curiosity creeping into his voice. He wondered what was so important that he wasn't allowed to engage the blonde-haired kunoichi just yet. You're not very skilled, Dosu remarked, casually picking up a small rock from the ground and tossing it in his hand as he addressed Naruko. A recently disturbed stone with a different shade, grass doesn't grow there. A trap is ineffective if it's too obvious. He explained, his tone instructive, though Naruko only pretended to be surprised. Unbeknownst to them, she had already accounted for something they hadn't noticed. So that kunai was meant to prevent the squirrel from setting off the trap, a boy nearby mused aloud, though his voice was audible to everyone. Dosu, eager to move forward and reach the tower, decided to take control of the situation. We don't need all of them here, he stated firmly. Let's deal with them quickly. His teammates, Zaku and Kin, nodded in agreement, and the trio from the Hidden Sound Village leapt into action, launching an attack on Naruko. Anticipating their move, Naruko swiftly cut the cord to her trap, sending a log hurtling toward her opponents. She assumed they would use the tree climbing technique to evade it. However, Dosu extended his hand and activated his melody gauntlet, releasing powerful sound waves that shattered the log effortlessly. With the obstacle cleared, Kin and Zaku pressed forward without hesitation. Realizing how easily they had bypassed her initial strategy, Naruko quickly reassessed the situation, determined to come up with a new approach. Seeing the determined look on Naruko's face, Dosu scoffed, expressing his frustration with how the young ninjas from the Hidden Leaf Village always seemed to have an advantage. Honestly, you don't have much natural talent. People like you have to work twice as hard. Someone as inexperienced as you shouldn't challenge opponents like us, Dosu remarked. However, Naruko simply smirked, having already noticed something the others had overlooked. Dosu carried a sense of resentment toward those from well-supported villages like the Hidden Leaf, feeling they had everything handed to them. Wind release, drilling air bullet jutsu. Naruko announced with confidence, launching a powerful burst of air toward Kin. Caught midair with little room to maneuver, Kin struggled to dodge. Shadow clone jutsu. Naruko quickly followed up, summoning multiple copies of herself to block any possible escape routes. Ah! Kin cried out, trying her best to evade the attack. Her arm took the full impact, leaving it weak and barely responsive. A deep gash had formed, and her muscles trembled from the strain. Team 10, watching from a distance and waiting for an opportunity, were stunned. While their strategy involved observing and stepping in at the right moment, this battle was proving to be more intense than they had anticipated. Ino Yamanaka, who had been holding her breath, widened her eyes in shock. Naruko has changed. She's really impressive right now. As Naruko continued her offensive techniques, Team 10 barely managed to dodge the residual effects of the attacks. Choji, caught off guard, stumbled as a tree branch struck him in the stomach. The sudden movement alerted Naruko that another group was nearby, causing her to heighten her awareness and prepare for any surprise interference. Zaku, using the unique openings in his arms, attempted to clear away Naruko's clones, but they surrounded him from all directions. He was caught off guard when one of them struck him from behind, making him lose his balance. That brief moment of instability was all Naruko's clones needed. They grabbed onto his arms, pulling them in ways that restricted his movements. Ah! Zaku shouted, wincing from the pressure. Choji, witnessing the scene, flinched at the sight. Is this really Naruko? He wondered, surprised by how much she had improved. Seizing the opportunity, Naruko swiftly launched another drilling air bullet jutsu, her most effective technique so far, toward Zaku. She understood that keeping her distance while protecting her teammates was the best course of action. Zaku, struggling to stand, quickly countered by releasing a powerful air wave, dispelling the clones. However, just as he steadied himself, another wind attack was already heading in his direction. He tried his best to dodge, but the force of the technique overwhelmed him, leaving him unable to continue. Ino watched in amazement, unable to believe how composed Naruko remained under pressure. She was demonstrating incredible skill without hesitation. Without wasting a second, Naruko swiftly threw 5 kunai in rapid succession, infusing them with wind chakra to enhance their precision. The 5th blade struck Kin, landing near her shoulder. She had been too focused on her earlier injury to react in time. TCH, they were useless anyway, Dosu muttered to himself, attempting to mask his growing unease. Although he prided himself on being stronger than his teammates, he hadn't expected Naruko to handle them so effortlessly. His confidence began to waver. Just as Naruko prepared to engage Dosu, a sudden force blindsided her. She turned quickly, only to see Sasuke approaching, covered in strange markings. Moving with speed that Dosu couldn't track, Sasuke dashed forward, avoiding an incoming strike and shattering Dosu's gauntlets with sheer force. His chakra flared around him, filling him with an intoxicating surge of energy. With his main weapons destroyed, Dosu found himself defenseless as Sasuke grabbed him firmly. Naruko, despite having just been in a battle herself, felt a wave of concern as she observed Sasuke's overwhelming strength. Something about his demeanor seemed different. "I feel incredible. So much power," Sasuke murmured to himself, staring at his hands in awe. For Ino Yamanaka, witnessing the scene before her was nothing short of astonishing. It painted a stark contrast between the two individuals she thought she knew so well. Naruko, usually energetic and carefree, now appeared composed, confident, and in complete control. On the other hand, Sasuke seemed almost unrecognizable, his demeanor was unsettling, as if he had lost himself entirely. It was unnerving, to say the least. Her father had always emphasized the importance of emotional discipline, a lesson she took to heart. Watching Sasuke so visibly unhinged was a revelation she hadn't expected. Meanwhile, Sakura, who had just arrived on the scene, rushed forward with urgency. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms tightly around Sasuke, her voice trembling as she pleaded, "Stop, Sasuke. Please." Tears streamed down her face as she tried to reach him. At that moment, Ino came to a realization: she had lost the silent competition for Sasuke's affections. If she had done what Sakura had just done, Sasuke likely wouldn't have responded in the same way. He would have simply brushed her aside without a second thought. Even with Sakura's intervention, Sasuke seemed resistant, almost as if he had already justified his actions in his mind. "What about Naruko?" he retorted, frustration evident in his voice. "Didn't you see her take down that enemy without hesitation? And the other opponents as well?" His red-tinted eyes burned with conviction, feeling the weight of an unfair double standard. Sakura's response, however, sealed the fate of their team. "I don't care about Naruko at all," she declared, her voice unwavering. "All I care about is you, Sasuke-kun." Those words alone were enough to make Sasuke pause. The tension in his body eased, and slowly, the ominous energy surrounding him began to fade. The curse mark that had started to take hold retreated, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Even so, something within him shifted. "I really am on my own, aren't I?" The thought struck him deeply, and before he could stop it, a single tear slipped down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away, unwilling to show any vulnerability. Ino, standing nearby, could only watch in shock. Did she really just say that? While Naruko was standing right there? Even with her limited understanding of psychology, Ino knew that Naruko longed for connection, validation, and belonging. Being an orphan, she must have struggled with feelings of loneliness for as long as she could remember. To hear a teammate say something so dismissive, especially after everything they had been through, was heartbreaking. The clearing fell silent. All eyes were on Team 7. Even Team Guy, who had been observing from a distance, chose not to intervene. Naruko, unfazed by the tension, retrieved the scroll from Dosu's belongings. Lifting her gaze, she met Neiji's eyes directly, exuding an air of quiet confidence. "Let this be a lesson about who Team 7 really is," she said, her tone unwavering. Neji, who had initially considered testing their strength, hesitated. Witnessing Sasuke's raw power and the unsettling chakra he had unleashed, he decided it wasn't worth the risk. Without a word, he turned and walked away, followed closely by Lee and Tenten. Naruko then shifted her attention to the members of Team 10, who had cautiously emerged from their hiding spot. They had witnessed everything: the battle, Sasuke's transformation, and Sakura's declaration. Naruko's sharp eyes studied them carefully before she spoke. "You didn't even have the courage to fight," she remarked, her tone neither mocking nor cruel, but firm. "If you're not willing to take risks, what makes you think you even have a chance of taking our scroll?" Despite the weight of her words, Ino refused to back down. Composing herself, she stepped forward, exuding confidence with each movement. She made sure to carry herself gracefully, observing the way Naruko's eyes followed her approach. A fleeting thought crossed Naruko's mind as she absent-mindedly recalled the moment Ino had passed her a secret message during the first exam. Wait. Is she trying to distract me? Shaking off the notion, Naruko's expression hardened. "If you think you can charm the scroll out of my hands, don't bother," she stated flatly. "Besides, you don't need to change yourself to impress anyone." Ino stiffened at the unexpected comment. She had always believed that appearance mattered more than anything. The countless magazines she had read told her that being as slim as possible was the standard of beauty. But was that really true? She quickly masked her emotions, unwilling to let Naruko see the effect of her words. "Who do you think you are, talking to me like that?" She shot back, her voice sharp. "I wasn't trying to manipulate you, I was just checking if you were all right. Not that your team seems to care about you." Though she tried to keep her voice steady, there was an undeniable edge to her tone. Ino had indeed been attempting to use subtle persuasion to her advantage, but hearing Naruko dismiss it so effortlessly was frustrating. She wasn't the only one putting up walls, though. Naruko's expression remained neutral, but there was an unmistakable flicker of hurt in her eyes, one that Sakura, still preoccupied with Sasuke, failed to notice. Lifting her chin, Ino turned away, unwilling to let anyone see the emotion stirring inside her. "I'll figure this out," she thought determinedly. "Naruko has changed. And I want to know why. And maybe, just maybe, I can help." Emerging from the smoke in front of them, the Chunin instructor assigned to guide them in their journey as shinobi appeared from the two scrolls. "Iruka-sensei?" Naruko questioned, surprised to see him standing there. Iruka smiled as he observed Naruko's new outfit, pleased that she seemed to be taking her role as a shinobi more seriously. Pushing aside his thoughts, he spoke. "At the conclusion of the second test, it's the responsibility of the Chunin to meet with the participants. I was fortunate enough to be assigned to meet with you all. I'm truly impressed that the three of you managed to complete the test in just over 2 days. I anticipated it might take longer. Nonetheless, you have all passed the second stage of the Chunin exams," Iruka announced. The three young ninjas in front of him smiled, while Sasuke smirked slightly, as the Forest of Death had certainly lived up to its reputation. Noticing their exhaustion, Iruka quickly moved on so they could rest in more comfortable conditions than the previous night. "I was tasked with sharing this important lesson with you when you summoned me," he began. "In this teaching, heaven represents the human mind, while earth represents the human body. If you lack knowledge, seek wisdom and prepare yourself. If you lack strength, train hard and improve your skills. If you have both, then you can overcome even the most challenging situations. The 5-day test evaluates a Genin's abilities and determines if they are ready to advance. Chunin are squad leaders, entrusted with guiding their teams on missions. Knowledge, stamina, and sound judgment are all essential qualities for those who take on this responsibility," Iruka explained. His former students nodded, showing they understood. Before using a jutsu to return to the Hokage and report the completion of his mission, Iruka had one last question. "Before I go, do any of you have something to say?" he asked. Naruko, still upset by Sakura's earlier words and Ino's remarks reinforcing them, spoke up. "Sasuke was attacked by Orochimaru and placed under some kind of jutsu that made him unconscious for a long time. When he woke up, his chakra felt as dark and unsettling as the Kyuubi's," Naruko stated matter-of-factly. Sakura and Sasuke turned to her in shock. They had all agreed not to mention the mark on Sasuke's collarbone. Sakura immediately responded, clearly unsettled. "Naruko, why would you say that? We all agreed to keep it a secret," she whispered, frustrated. She had hoped to impress Sasuke by keeping her word, despite her underlying concern. Naruko, however, wasn't in the mood to hold back. "In the forest, you made it very clear that you didn't consider me part of the team. You only cared about Sasuke," she said, her voice firm. Sakura was taken aback. Naruko had never responded to her with such intensity before. What she didn't realize was that Naruko had been holding in a lot of frustration, and this was only a glimpse of it. Iruka, for his part, was surprised to see Naruko expressing such strong emotions towards Sakura. The Naruko he knew was always cheerful and supportive, especially toward her teammates. This change in demeanor made Iruka long for the light-hearted, optimistic girl he was familiar with. However, he set aside his thoughts, recognizing the importance of reporting this new information to the Hokage. "Understood. You're all dismissed so you can rest. But Sasuke, we will discuss the mark on your neck first thing in the morning," Iruka said. Naruko sighed in relief, eager to get some well-earned sleep after staying awake for nearly 19 hours straight. Engaging in conversation with her former mentor was an unusual experience for Naruko. She couldn't help but realize that if he had truly put in the effort, he could have helped her grow much more as a ninja. The progress she had made on her own, with only a bit of guidance from Kakashi, far outweighed the 5 years she had spent at the academy. That realization left her feeling uneasy. Iruka had always assured her that he saw her as a person, not as anything else. However, looking back at her early training, she couldn't help but question whether he truly viewed her that way back then. If only Naruko knew that Iruka had no real obligation beyond the basics of teaching, who knows what she would think if she ever discovered that her mentor was once her father's student. My dear YouTube family, that's all for now. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you. Anime Dreams.